You hear it too, don't you? That low hum beneath the white noise of your life. That frequency just below consciousness. The one you notice only in the dead silence of 3 a.m. when the world goes quiet and something else gets loud. You tell yourself it's the refrigerator, the heating pipes, the wind finding a gap in the window frame. But you're lying. And somewhere deep in the ancient meat of your brain, the part that remembers when we were prey, you know you're lying. I'm the quartermaster. I've sailed vessels you'll never see on any registry, through waters that don't appear on civilian maps. I've cataloged horrors that admirals classify and priests refuse to exorcise. And I'm here to tell you about the sound that kills, not with volume, not with frequency, but with recognition. This is about the sailors who learned the difference between nature and something that mimics nature. Something that learned our language not from our mouths, but from our bones. Something that lives in the crushing dark of the Atlantic Trench, where the pressure would compact your skull like a beer can, where no light has shone since the formation of the Earth itself. This is about the USNS Intrepid Survey. 47 souls, 11,000 tons of steel and hubris. A research vessel that went looking for the secrets of the deep and found something looking back. Most importantly, this is about a sound, a voice. And the 18 days it took for 31 people to walk, calmly, deliberately, smiling, into black water. The first man to hear it was Jacob Sørensen, Danish, 42 years old, sonar operator. 20 years of naval service across 3 navies, a man who could identify a humpback whale by the rhythm of its heartbeat, who could tell you the difference between a Russian Akula-class submarine and a Sierra-class by the blade count of their propellers. His ears were instruments, precision tools honed by 2 decades of listening to the ocean's secrets. On November 3, 1983, Jacob sat in the sonar room of the Intrepid Survey, 500 miles off the coast of Brazil, hovering above a section of the mid-Atlantic ridge that had never been properly mapped. The ridge, a massive underwater mountain range where the Earth's crust tears itself apart, was spitting out new ocean floor, creating trenches that dropped 7 miles into geology so old it predated complex life. Jacob was tired. 14-hour shifts monitoring the low-frequency sonar array, watching green lines paint pictures of the abyss on his screen. The repetitive ping, echo, ping, echo, ping, like a heartbeat, like a clock counting down. At 0347 hours, he logged the first anomaly. The sonar pulse went down. Something came back, but the echo was wrong. It arrived too quickly for the depth reading. The frequency was distorted, modulated, like someone had taken the sonar's voice and played it back through a damaged speaker. Interference, he wrote in the log. Possible thermal layer refraction. Recommend recalibration. At 0442 hours, it happened again. But this time, Jacob put his headphones on. Standard procedure. Sometimes you can hear things in the raw audio feed that the visual display misses. He pressed the cushions tight against his ears, closed his eyes, and listened to the deep. Ping. Silence. Then, not an echo. Something else. Something that made Jacob's hands go cold despite the tropical humidity of the sonar room. It was a sound that resembled the sonar ping the way a parrot resembles human speech. Technically accurate, but wrong in every fundamental way. It had inflection. It had rhythm. It had the unmistakable quality of something trying. Jacob sat frozen for 11 seconds. The timestamp is precise because the security camera in the corner recorded him, headphones on, motionless, his face draining of color in the green glow of the sonar screen. Then he tore the headphones off so violently the cable ripped from the jack. "I need to speak to Dr. Voss," he told the night supervisor. "Now." "It's 4 in the morning, Jacob." "I don't give a shit what time it is. Something responded to us." The night supervisor laughed. Not mockingly, nervous relief. "The ocean's full of things that respond, man. Whales, dolphins, Not like this." Jacob's voice was flat. Dead. "Not like this. Dr. Caroline Voss didn't come down to the sonar room. She sent a message through the supervisor. Log it. We'll review in the morning. Probably biologics." Jacob logged it. But he also did something else. something that would be discovered later in his personal effects after. He started a separate notebook, a small waterproof field journal with a black cover. On the first page, in his precise engineer's handwriting, he wrote, November 3rd, Euro 347. It answered. November 3rd, Euro 412. It answered again, but different, like it was learning, like it was practicing. Over the next 48 hours, Jacob logged 17 more anomalies, each one different from the last, each one closer to something recognizable. By the third day, other sonar operators were hearing it too, reporting it, getting the same dismissive response from Dr. Voss and her team. It's cave systems, she explained in the mess hall on day 5. The ridge is geologically active. You're hearing sonar reflections off underwater caverns, lava tubes, mineral deposits. The modulation is from the varying density of the rock strata. It was a good explanation. Scientific, rational. It satisfied everyone except the people who were actually listening. Because Jacob had started hearing it outside the sonar room. At first, he thought it was tinnitus, occupational hazard. All sonar operators get it eventually. That high-pitched whine that lives in your skull. The price you pay for teaching your brain to hear things humans weren't meant to hear. But this wasn't high-pitched. It was low, subsonic. A frequency you felt in your chest before you heard it in your ears. He noticed it first in the engine room, where he'd gone to clear his head. The massive diesel generators thrummed at their constant, reliable rhythm, but underneath, threading through the mechanical growl like a melody through static, was something else. A hum that rose and fell. That had pattern. That had cadence. Jacob stood there for 20 minutes, his hand pressed against the vibrating metal of the generator housing, feeling it travel up his arm, into his shoulder, settling in the base of his skull like an insect boring into wood. When he mentioned it to Luis Ibarra, the equipment technician, Luis's face went pale. You hear it too? Luis whispered, glancing around the engine room as if afraid of being overheard by the machines. I thought I was losing my shit, man. It's in everything. The pipes, the hull. I heard it yesterday in the coffee maker. In the fucking coffee maker, Jacob. They weren't the only ones. By day 7, 12 crew members had reported auditory disturbances, headaches, insomnia. That feeling of being watched that makes the hairs stand up on your neck, except the feeling was auditory. The sensation that something was listening to them listen to it. Dr. Voss scheduled a ship-wide meeting, psychological evaluation. She brought in the ship's medical officer, Dr. Rashid Chen, who gave a presentation on infrasound, frequencies below 20 Hz that humans can't consciously hear, but that cause anxiety, paranoia, hallucinations. What you're experiencing, Doctor, Chen explained, is infrasound-induced auditory hallucination. The ocean is full of infrasonic frequencies. Earthquakes, underwater landslides, even large ships generate it. Your brains are taking random noise and pattern matching it into something familiar. It's called pareidolia, the same reason you see faces in clouds. It was another good explanation. Scientific, rational. But that night, at 0300 hours, Jacob wrote in his black notebook, It knows my mother's name. The USNS Intrepid Survey was a civilian vessel with a military heart. Officially, it belonged to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Officially, its mission was oceanographic research, mapping the uncharted sections of the mid-Atlantic ridge, studying the unique ecosystems that thrived around hydrothermal vents, collecting geological samples from the newest crust on Earth. Unofficially, it carried experimental sonar equipment that the U.S. Navy was very interested in. Low-frequency active sonar capable of penetrating deeper than anything previously deployed. Frequencies so low they could detect submarines hiding in thermal layers, map underwater caves through solid rock, find shipwrecks buried under centuries of sediment. Frequencies so low they could reach places that had never heard sound before. The Intrepid Survey left port in Charleston, South Carolina, on October 15, 1983. The Cold War was still cold, and the ocean floor was the last great battlefield, a three-dimensional chessboard where submarines played cat and mouse in the crushing dark. Whoever controlled the deep controlled the seas. and whoever controlled the seas controlled the world. Dr. Caroline Voss was the chief scientist, 38 years old, MIT graduate, a rising star in marine acoustics who'd published 3 papers on using sonar to map the Earth's mantle. She was brilliant, ambitious, and absolutely convinced that the ocean floor held secrets that would rewrite humanity's understanding of the planet. She was also responsible for choosing the survey location, 23rd South, 31st West, a section of the mid-Atlantic ridge where the African and South American tectonic plates were spreading apart at a rate of 3 centimeters per year, fast in geological terms. The area had never been surveyed because it was considered strategically unimportant, commercially worthless, and geologically boring. But Dr. Voss had a theory. She believed that the rapid spreading was creating hydrothermal vent systems unlike anything previously discovered. Vents that connected to magma chambers deep in the mantle. Chambers that could provide acoustic windows into the Earth's interior. "We're going to listen to the planet's heartbeat," she told the crew at the pre-departure briefing. "We're going to hear the sound of creation itself." Captain Marcus Webb, U.S. Navy retired, but recalled for this classified mission, was less poetic. 54 years old, 30 years of service. A man who'd survived 2 submarine collisions and a fire in the engine room of a destroyer. A man who trusted 2 things, the chain of command and the laws of physics. He didn't like Dr. Voss. Thought she was reckless. Thought she cared more about her career than the safety of her crew. But orders were orders, and the orders said, take the scientists where they want to go, protect the equipment, get results. So he took them to 23° south, 31° west, and held position over a trench that dropped 7,200 meters into the oldest, coldest, darkest water on Earth. The crew was a mix. 23 Navy personnel, mostly sonar operators and communications specialists. 18 civilian contractors, scientists, engineers, equipment techs. 6 Indonesian and Filipino deckhands who'd been working research vessels for years and had seen their share of strange things in deep water. Jacob Sørensen was one of 4 senior sonar operators. The others were Lieutenant Michael Reeves, U.S. Navy, 28, a prodigy who could read sonar screens the way musicians read sheet music. Sarah Okonkwo, civilian contractor, 31, Nigerian, with a Ph.D. in marine biology and a side specialty in bioacoustics. And Chen Wei, 45, Taiwanese, former submarine sonar operator who'd defected in 1979 and brought with him knowledge of Soviet underwater listening stations. These 4 would be the first to truly hear it, because they spent 10 to 14 hours a day with their ears pressed against the voice of the deep, teaching their brains to translate pressure waves into pictures, sound into sight. They were also the first to break. The equipment was state-of-the-art. A towed array sonar system capable of producing pulses at frequencies as low as 10 Hz, well into the infrasonic range. At those frequencies, sound travels farther, penetrates deeper, reveals more. But it also does something else. It resonates with the human body. Your eyeballs vibrate at 18 Hz, your inner ear fluid at 12 Hz, your lungs at 7 Hz. When you're exposed to sound at those frequencies, even at low volumes, your body becomes an instrument. Your organs vibrate in sympathy. Your bones conduct the frequency like tuning forks. You become the receiver. Dr. Voss knew this, of course. There were safety protocols, time limits on exposure, required breaks every 2 hours, soundproofed booths. But protocols are written for ideal conditions, and the Intrepid Survey was chasing data in a narrow weather window before the South Atlantic winter storms made the area impassable. So shifts got longer, breaks got shorter, and the sonar room, officially called the Acoustic Analysis Center but universally known as the Cave, became a place where 4 people sat in the dark for 12, 14, sometimes 16 hours a day, listening to the voice of a trench 7 miles deep. On day 3, Dr. Voss made the decision that killed them all. She increased the sonar's output power by 40% and lowered the frequency to 8 Hz. "We're not getting penetration deep enough," she explained to Captain Webb. "The thermal layers are scattering the signal. I need more power and lower frequency to punch through." "That puts us below the safety threshold," Webb said. Below 10 Hz is flagged as potential biological hazard. For extended exposure, we're talking minutes, not hours. The operators are already spending 12-hour shifts in there. Then we'll rotate them more frequently. Marcus, we have 2 weeks before weather turns. 2 weeks to collect data that could redefine marine geology. I'm not going to miss this because of overcautious regulations written by people who've never done real field work. Captain Webb's mistake was thinking she was wrong. His second mistake was not relieving her of duty when he realized she was right. Because on day 4, at 1534 hours, the sonar array fired a pulse at 8 Hz, 200 decibels, into a trench 7,200 meters deep. And something, somewhere in that crushing darkness, something that had never heard sound before, or had been waiting silently for millions of years to hear a sound like this again, woke up. The response came 18 seconds later. Not an echo. A reply. Jakob was in the cave when it happened. He was alone, technically against protocol, but the other operators were at dinner, and he'd volunteered to monitor the systems. He was wearing the full headset, high-grade, noise-canceling, designed to let the operator hear the entire frequency spectrum from 5 Hz to 50 kHz. When the reply came through, it hit him like a physical force. He described it later, in his black notebook, in handwriting that deteriorated from his usual precise script into something jagged and urgent. It wasn't sound. It was pressure. It was architecture. It was something using the language of acoustics to build a structure inside my head. I felt it behind my eyes, in my sinuses, in the hollow spaces of my skull. It was building something, learning me, mapping me. I tore the headset off and my ears were bleeding. Not from volume, from resonance. My eardrums were vibrating so hard they tore themselves apart. I could taste copper. I could smell ozone. And underneath it all, I could hear, I swear to God, I could hear, breathing. Dr. Voss, when she reviewed the audio recording later, heard nothing unusual. A sonar pulse. A slightly odd echo. Some distortion, yes, but consistent with refraction through varying water density. But Jakob heard it, and his body remembered. That night he went to Dr. Chen complaining of severe headaches, nosebleeds, and tinnitus. Dr. Chen found ruptured capillaries in both of Jacob's ear canals and perforated his right eardrum. "You're done with sonar duty," Dr. Chen said. "I'm putting you on medical leave. No acoustic equipment for at least 2 weeks." Jacob nodded, agreed, then went back to his cabin and sat in the dark, listening to the sound that was now inside him. The sound that didn't need his ears anymore because it had found a direct route to his auditory cortex. The sound that knew his name. Over the next 4 days, Dr. Voss pushed the sonar harder. 10 Hz, 7 Hz, 6 Hz. Each time going deeper, listening longer, chasing a signal she was convinced held the key to understanding the Earth's interior structure. And each time the reply came back stronger, clearer, more structured. Lieutenant Reeves was the second to break. On day 8, he stood up in the middle of his shift, removed his headset with exaggerated care, and said to Sarah Okonkwo, "Do you hear your father?" Sarah, whose father had died of a stroke 3 years earlier, said no. "Strange," Reeves said. "He's been calling me all morning, asking about you, asking if you're eating well." Then Reeves walked out of the cave, went up to the deck, and sat at the stern rail for 6 hours, not speaking, just staring at the water. When Captain Webb finally convinced him to come inside, Reeves said, "I wasn't ignoring you, Captain. I just couldn't hear you over all the other voices." Chen Wei was the third. On day 10, he filed a formal complaint with Dr. Voss. "The equipment is malfunctioning. It's picking up transmissions, radio chatter, multiple languages. I'm hearing Mandarin, Russian, Portuguese. It's underwater communication systems. We're picking up submarine traffic." Dr. Voss checked. There were no submarines within 1,000 miles. No radio transmissions, no underwater comm systems. The ocean was, according to every sensor on the ship, empty of human presence except for them. But Chen kept hearing voices. And then Sarah started hearing them too. And then Luis Ibarra, who'd never spent a minute in the sonar room but worked in the engine room where the low-frequency vibrations traveled through the hull like a tuning fork. By day 11, 19 crew members were reporting auditory phenomena. Most described it the same way. Voices calling their names. Voices that sounded like loved ones. Voices that came from the water, from the walls, from inside the pipes and machinery. Voices that were insistent, urgent, beckoning. Captain Webb called a meeting with Dr. Voss in his quarters. "We're done," he said. "We're shutting down the sonar and returning to port. We have 4 more days of survey time. We have a crew that's falling apart. I've got 19 people hearing things, 3 with documented ear injuries, and a sonar operator who tried to climb over the stern rail last night because he said his dead mother was in the water calling for help. Mass hysteria, stress, close quarters. I'll cut their shifts in half, mandate 8 hours of sleep. Caroline." Captain Webb's voice was flat, final. "You're a scientist. You deal in facts. Here's a fact. Something is wrong. I don't know if it's the equipment, the frequency, some biological phenomenon we don't understand, or mass fucking hallucination, but we're leaving." Dr. Voss looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. 48 hours. Give me 48 hours to collect final data and I'll recommend we return early. 24, 36, please Marcus, I'm so close. Captain Webb's final mistake was saying yes, because that night at 0243 hours, crewman Rodriguez, a deckhand from the Philippines who'd never been inside the sonar room, who had no exposure to the experimental equipment, walked calmly to the stern deck in his boxer shorts and a t-shirt, climbed over the safety rail, and dropped into the black Atlantic without making a sound. The deck camera caught it. The footage was later classified, but descriptions of it leaked. Rodriguez walked with purpose. Not stumbling, not running, not showing any signs of distress. He walked to the rail, looked down at the water, and his face, according to the officer who reviewed the tape, broke into a smile. A wide, genuine, childlike smile of pure joy. Then he climbed over and let gravity take him. The water was 4,200 meters deep at that point. His body was never recovered. In his bunk, investigators later found a note written on the back of a maintenance checklist. "Mama is calling. She says it's beautiful down there. She says there's no more pain. She says come home." Rodriguez's mother had been dead for 6 years. She'd drowned in a flash flood while crossing a river to get to market. The official report called it suicide brought on by depression and isolation. The unofficial report, the one that lives in classified archives and is read only by people with clearances so high they don't technically exist, says something different. It says, "Subject displayed behavior consistent with acoustic manipulation. Recommend immediate cessation of low-frequency sonar testing until phenomenon can be properly studied and safety protocols established." But that report wouldn't be written for 3 more weeks. 3 weeks after the Intrepid Survey stopped responding to radio calls. 3 weeks after a U.S. Coast Guard cutter found her drifting, engines running, crew vanished, and a tape recorder playing in the captain's cabin. 3 weeks after everyone except 3 people learned the same lesson humans have been learning since we first built boats and dared the horizon. The ocean isn't empty, it's listening. And when you shout into the dark long enough, eventually something shouts back. Jakob Sørensen's black notebook, recovered from his cabin, day 11. "They keep asking if I'm okay. Dr. Chen wants to sedate me. Captain Webb is watching me like I'm a bomb, but I'm not crazy. I know what crazy feels like. My uncle went mad, wandered into the forest in winter. They found him 3 weeks later trying to dig through frozen ground with his bare hands. That's crazy. This is different. This is clarity. For the first time in my life, I understand what I've been hearing all these years. All those whale songs I recorded, all those submarine propellers I tracked, all those tectonic rumbles and shrimp colonies and ice shelves calving. I thought I was listening to nature. I was listening to it talk to itself. The ocean, not the water. Something in the water. Something that existed before the water. Something that's always been here, in the deepest places, where the pressure would crush bone to powder and the darkness is older than eyes. It's been talking to itself for millions of years, and we just taught it a new language. Our language. The language of names and memory and longing. It's learning us. It's learning what we love, what we've lost. It's reading our grief like we read sonar screens, and it's using that grief to call us home. Last night I heard my mother, not the memory of her voice. I know what memory sounds like. This was her. The exact pitch, the exact accent, the way she said my name when I was a child and scraped my knee or couldn't sleep. Jakob Minskat, come here. Let me hold you. I know she's dead. I watched her die. I held her hand. But the voice, I'm calling it the voice now because it doesn't feel right anymore. The voice knows her better than memory does. It knows the version of her that exists in my amygdala, in the parts of my brain that light up when I smell her perfume or hear a song she used to sing. It's not mimicking her. It's not even trying to trick me. It's offering her back to me. Not the memory, the feeling, the comfort, the love, and I want to go. God help me, I want to jump. But I won't. Not yet. Because I need to understand it first. I need to know what it is. We woke something up, and I need to know if it's waking us up or calling us to sleep. That was Jakob's last entry. The next page was torn out. The page after that was blank, except for a single sentence written and rewritten hundreds of times, the letters overlapping until they became a solid mass of ink. Don't listen, don't listen, don't listen, don't listen, don't listen. Day 12. 0534 hours. The Intrepid Survey was preparing to leave. Captain Webb had ordered the sonar array recovered, the mission aborted, and a course set for Charleston. Dr. Voss had protested, of course, but even she could see the crew was falling apart. 3 people were on psychiatric watch. 7 had documented physical symptoms, nosebleeds, ruptured eardrums, severe migraines, and 12, including Jakob, were asking to be confined to their cabins because they couldn't trust themselves near the rails. The sonar array was a sophisticated piece of equipment, a 200-meter towed cable studded with hydrophones and transmitters. Recovering it was a delicate operation involving winches, cables, and a deck crew working in coordination with the bridge. It took approximately 40 minutes to reel in completely. They had it halfway up when the winch jammed. Luis Ibarra, the equipment tech, went down to check the mechanism. The winch motor was fine, the cable was fine, but the tension sensor was reading weights that didn't make sense, fluctuating wildly, as if something was pulling on the array from below. Could be caught on an outcrop. Luis radioed to the bridge. Or debris. I'm seeing tension spikes every few seconds. Cut it loose, Captain Webb ordered. I'm not risking crew for equipment. Sir, this is a $40 million array. I said, cut it loose. But before Luis could grab the hydraulic cutters, the tension released. The cable went slack. The array rose smoothly for another 20 meters, and then they heard it. Not through the sonar system, which was powered down. Not through speakers or headphones or electronic equipment. They heard it directly, transmitted through the ship's hull, through the water, through the air itself. A sound, low, subsonic, a frequency that made the deck plates vibrate and the coffee in cups form standing waves. A sound that made your teeth ache and your vision blur and your heart skip beats. A sound that, if you listened carefully, had pattern, had structure, had syllables. Every person on deck froze. 47 people, all of them hearing the same thing, all of them feeling it in their bones. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The array broke the surface. The deck crew stared at it. Because every single hydrophone, 37 individual sensors, each protected by impact-resistant housing, was shattered. Not broken by impact. Shattered from the inside out, as if something had resonated them to destruction. And wrapped around the array, coating it in a thick gelatinous layer that stank of deep ocean and rot, and something else, something organic but wrong, was bioluminescent material, glowing faintly blue-green in the early morning light. Dr. Voss, who'd come up to the deck against Webb's orders, ran to the array with the excitement of a scientist finding proof of a miracle. Do you see this? Do you see this? It's biologics. It's a deep-sea organism we've discovered. This is... She reached out to touch it. Luis grabbed her wrist. Don't. It's just bioluminescence, for God's sake. It's harmless. Look at it. She looked, really looked, and saw what Louise had seen. The glowing material wasn't random. It was patterned, organized. It formed shapes, not quite shapes, almost shapes. The kind of pattern your brain recognizes as significant even though you can't articulate why. The kind of pattern that makes prey animals freeze because every instinct is screaming that they're being watched by something that wants to eat them. "Get it off my ship," Captain Webb said quietly. "Wash the deck, wash the array, throw everything contaminated overboard, and then we're leaving. No discussion, no debate. We leave now." They left, but they took the voice with them. Because the voice wasn't in the equipment anymore. It wasn't in the water anymore. It was in them. Day 13. The Intrepid Survey was 200 nautical miles from the survey site, engines running full, heading northeast toward the shipping lanes where help was plentiful and the ocean was well-traveled and safe. Captain Webb had radioed their position in ETA. He'd filed a preliminary report citing equipment failure and medical emergencies. He'd done everything right, but people kept hearing it. Jakob described it best in a conversation with Dr. Chen that was recorded as part of the medical documentation. "It's not in my ears anymore. It's in my head. No, that's not right either. It's in the space between thoughts. You know how sometimes you can hear yourself thinking? That internal voice that narrates your life? It's there now. It's underneath my internal voice. It's learning to sound like me. Jakob, you're experiencing auditory hallucinations brought on by..." No, you're not listening. It's not a hallucination. A hallucination is your brain making something up. This is real. It's not using my ears anymore. It found another way in. Through what? Through memory, through fear, through love. Pick your poison, Doc. It's using whatever door we left open. Sarah Okonkwo reported hearing her grandmother singing lullabies in Igbo. A grandmother who died when Sarah was 6. A grandmother whose voice Sarah had spent 30 years trying to remember. Chen Wei heard his daughter. His daughter was alive and well in Taipei, but Chen hadn't seen her in 4 years because defecting meant never going home. The voice knew this. The voice offered what Chen wanted most. "Baba, wo xiang ni. Come home, Baba." Lieutenant Reeves heard his high school girlfriend, the one who died in a car accident their senior year, the one he'd never gotten to say goodbye to. She called his name at night. She told him she'd been waiting. She told him the water was warm and she was lonely. By day 14, 27 crew members were hearing personal voices. The remaining 20 were waiting their turn because they all knew, deep in that ancient prey brain that never forgets danger, that it was just a matter of time. Dr. Voss tried science. She set up a controlled experiment. Put people in a soundproof chamber, monitor their brain activity with an EEG, see if the hallucinations persisted without external stimuli. They did. In fact, they got worse. In silence, the voice was all there was. The EEG readings were impossible. Theta waves, the frequency associated with deep meditation and REM sleep, dominant even when subjects were fully awake. And underneath the theta waves, a rhythm, a pattern, a frequency around 7 hertz that shouldn't have been there at all, because that frequency doesn't occur naturally in conscious human brains. Dr. Voss stopped the experiment after Subject 3, crewman Martinez, began seizing. Not epileptic seizures, something else. His body vibrating in sympathetic resonance with a frequency no one else could see on the monitors. "It's teaching our brains to hear it," Dr. Voss said to Captain Webb. She looked 10 years older than she had 2 weeks ago. Her hands shook. Her eyes were bloodshot. "We exposed ourselves to low-frequency sound for so long that we've adapted. Neuroplasticity. Our auditory cortexes have literally rewired themselves to detect frequencies below normal hearing range. We've turned ourselves into receivers for something that broadcasts in infrasound. Can you fix it? I don't know, maybe. In a proper medical facility, with proper equipment, with months of therapy, and we have 3 days until port. I know. Can they last 3 days?" Dr. Voss didn't answer. She didn't have to, because at that moment the ship's intercom crackled to life, and a voice, calm, matter-of-fact, almost bored, said, "All hands to the fantail. I think you'll want to see this." It was Martinez, the same Martinez who'd been seizing in the soundproof chamber 20 minutes ago. He was at the stern rail. He was standing on the outside of the rail, holding on with one hand, his bare feet balanced on the narrow ledge, his other hand holding the intercom handset. "It's beautiful down there," he said into the handset. His voice echoed through every speaker on the ship. "You should see it. All the people. All the lights. It's like a city at the bottom of everything. And they're waiting for us. They've been waiting so long." Captain Webb was running. Dr. Chen was running. Half the crew was running toward the stern. They weren't fast enough. Martinez smiled, that same wide, childlike smile that Rodriguez had worn, and let go. The water took him without a splash, as if the ocean had opened a mouth and swallowed him whole. They found the intercom handset dangling from its cable, swinging in the wind, still transmitting. And through the speaker, from the handset that was now just picking up ambient sound, they heard it. Static. Wind. The slap of waves against the hull, and underneath all of that, almost imperceptible, a hum, a voice, a chorus of voices, singing. Day 15. Captain Webb ordered all exterior doors locked, all rails to be monitored by armed watch, all crew to be paired up, no one alone, ever. All sharp objects secured, all medication inventoried. He was trying to run a mental institution in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It wasn't working. Crewman Okafor walked into the engine room at 0300 hours, climbed into the main diesel generator while it was running, and was dead before anyone could stop him. The machinery chewed him up. They had to shut down the engine to get him out. What they pulled out wasn't recogni,